Hello learners, welcome to this online session. Today we are going to cover the topic on research in public relations, and this comes under advertising and public relations MJM 029. My name is Dr. Maithili Ganju and I'm a professor of advertising and PR. Students, it's interesting to see what we are going to be discussing today, which is we are trying to understand the role of research. Now, research is something which is like a foundation for any marketing tool that is used. In the marketing space that we exist and where public relation is an important topic, we know that marketing, advertising, as well as PR, they intersect and they sort of work in tandem with each other. But the base of this tandem, the base of this strategic outlook that each of the component has is basically research. Before we get into the details of the research, let's move back and actually look at what is public relations. Public relation, it connects the organization, which could also be a brand or even a person, with other people who are important to them, which means that sometimes when we are talking about a brand, we would be talking about the customers, or we would be talking about the consumers, we could be talking about the financiers, we could also be talking about citizens if the organization is the government itself, or we could be talking about people at large. In a way, when you look at the public relations and it's dealing with the important people, we refer both to the people who are within the organization or the people who are outside, which means people who help to build the brand as well as the people for whom the brand is out there to sort of offer itself. PR entails those activities which are conducted to promote as well as protect the products or the policies in the eyes of these publics. Thus, the aim is to manage the whole public opinion of the organization as well as the brand or the person that we are talking about. Now, what do I mean by this? What I mean is that since we are talking about a connect between the public relations organization or a brand, to be comfortable, and the people who are dealing with the brand, the people who are there because of the brand or people who are there for whom the brand is there. Therefore, it is important to understand from the brand's perspective what and how these people think of the brand. Therefore, the opinion that the people carry about the brand is going to be very important for the brand's success. Therefore, whether it is the consumer who has a certain image of the brand and who buys the brand because that is the image which the consumer wants to identify with, or if it is the person who is behind the building of that brand, who again has to be someone who is invested in the brand, the opinion of both these people is very important for the brand to do well. And that precisely is how public relations helps to develop a certain opinion. Therefore, when we look at the key functions, we realize one of the major function of a PR department or an agency would be to enrich the company's reputation. That is why you would have often heard a definition by any known theorist which would talk about PR being the reputation keepers, or people who are able to manage the reputation of a certain brand or a company. It's because the opinion leads to a certain reputation, and it is that reputation because of which you are able to pull the people to buy the brand, or you are able to get the people to be associated with particular brand. PR professionals, as they move along, also have to be very skilled publicists, which means they should be able to publicize the good aspect, the relevant aspect, the aspects which make that particular brand or particular organization attractive that is something that a PR person is expected to be doing. Among other strengths which a PR specialist has to have is to be a great strategist. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, you know that any of the marketing tool, whether it is advertising or it is marketing in itself, and particularly the public relations, it talks about getting people to kind of have a favorable opinion, and to do so you definitely have to follow a certain path, follow certain strategies, have certain campaigns, and all this is going to require a strategic mind. A strategic mind is the one which is able to convert the understanding into proper methods, proper strategies through which we are able to get our work done or meet our objectives. So the PR person has to be a great strategist, in the sense be able to build very good strategies, effective strategies and campaigns which are going to put the organization or the brand in the best possible way in front of the whole world. The role of the PR as a reputation protector, as an image builder, and even as a crisis manager is something that you would already be knowing as being an important function. When I say crisis manager, what do I mean? Now, for a brand, it is very easy to say that, you know, only the best things should be out there, but many times your brands or your people or your organization do get into some sort of, disrepute, some sort of controversy. It is then that the PR person is required to step in and clear that particular crisis, clear that particular misconception, or clear that kind of bad reputation for the company. Now, you will recall some time back, we have been seeing a lot of brands getting into trouble. The iconic case is that of Pepsi. We saw some years back how Pepsi was dragged into a controversy because of its usage of certain products which in the making of the drink, which were considered to be unhealthy. And at that point of time, when a lot of uproar took place around that, it was the PR managers of that particular brand who came up and rescued, or at least explained or tried to put across the viewpoint and manage the crisis for them. Similarly, you would remember Maggi, another brand from the Nestle, which got into a sort of controversy, and that is where the PR managers were able to resolve that crisis. Many times, this crisis is not just limited to brands. A lot of political figures, a lot of celebrities, several times you will see that they fall into some sort of controversy, especially certain films. Like, if you will recall, there was a certain film that came out called Padmavat, and there was a lot of crisis that suddenly there was a lot of controversy around it, and there was a lot of anger, anguish that was there within certain communities. And to put all that to rest, there was a huge PR exercise that was done by the organizers of that film, the producers of the film, in order to see that the reputation of the organization, as in the filmmaking unit, as well as the actors, was not harmed in any way. So these are the kind of situations I talk about when I talk about crisis. And I'm sure this is something, as PR students, you are already familiar with. So I will quickly now say, what are those qualities that we look for, or you are already familiar with, when you look for a good PR person? We are talking about credibility. Why? Because how can you be trusted on saying something unless people believe in you? So credibility is an important quality that a PR person or a PR agency has to have. Has to be resourceful, because you see, you are reaching out to the entire public. How will you reach out unless you really have those contacts? Then media savvy, again, because media is a very important vehicle through which PR is able to exercise its control. And a very creative, strategic person whose ideas and whose skills in articulation help them to connect with people. But the important and the most essential quality that a person in public relations ought to have is to be an ace researcher. Now, why do I say that? I say that because if you reflect on all the points that we have discussed so far, unless the person has the pulse to the people, unless the person has the pulse to the market, unless the person knows about the numbers, the facts, the environment in which one is operating, you cannot expect the other skills to be so proficient. So, researcher is someone who is able to control a lot of other things, be it strategizing, be it being able to manage risk, be it about being convincing as a campaign developer. Research and its qualities are something that are absolutely essential. And on that note, we will move and we'll try to understand what research really means. This whole idea is to contextualize for you the need for a researcher, need for research for effective PR. I start by reminding you of some of the PR processes that you are already familiar with. One of the processes that I have picked up just as an example here is the process which talks about planning, research and evaluation. So essentially, whenever a PR strategy is put in place, you start by initially understanding people, which is what research is all about. This is where a situation analysis is done. This is where the target audience is understood. This is where the market is understood, and this is where the phenomena that one is trying to create a public relation for is understood. This, of course, is research. What does research lead to? It is good research that helps you to establish your PR objectives. Remember, and you will always recall this, that anything and everything in public relations should begin with setting the right objectives, because PR, advertising, marketing, they are interconnected, but they have their own job to do, and the distinguishing factor always is the objective with which each of the component of the marketing tool begins to address the situation. So here we are going to be talking about setting up of the objectives. Once the objectives are set, and once the research tells you what the environment is for, how you're going to be able to get to that objective, you come to the stage where you develop a strategy. Strategy leads to a certain campaign or may lead to some sort of intervention, depending on what the objectives are. And finally, these are rolled out. After a while, when the PR exercise is done, is the time to sit and evaluate the impact of that exercise in order to see that the objectives have been met or have not been met. That evaluation study also forms an important part of what we call research. Therefore, you will see on the right hand corner of your slide the two particular round buckets are talking about the research and the underlying importance of research in public relations, where we are able to sort of find out a lot of information which help us put the objectives down. Objective lead to the development of the campaign, and then the evaluation. It is only the evaluation of that particular campaign which helps you to further move into an understanding that is done in order to figure out the objectives. So in a circular fashion, it starts with the research and it ends with the research in an effort to understand what the ground reality is, so that the problems are identified and objectives are fixed, and the strategy and solutions thereafter. So research is a systematic investigation of any phenomena to find out the truth, Truth we understand in a scientific term to be something that is objective, that is verifiable, which is reliable and measurable. Now these are characteristics which come to us from pure or natural sciences. But as a social science subject, we tend to tweak it a little bit. Why do we do that? Because we are not going to be doing a research in a laboratory system. We do a research in the social space, dealing with people. However, doing a research also has another issue, which is that many times people refer to research as they refer to commonsensical understanding. It is very important to understand the difference between the two. The common sense understanding, which by and large is sort of makes sense, is not research per se, because it lacks the rigor and the systematic collection, systematic analysis which a proper research has. So let's understand what we mean when we talk about research. Research, we all know, is to research, search again for the information which is there and which is required. In the context of public relations, it's important to understand that research can either be secondary, which means it is a research which has already been done by others and is now available for scrutiny, and there is primary research, which is a fresh research which is done or fresh inquiry which is looked into. When we talk about secondary research, it plays a very important role in public relations, because many times the information that is being sought, say about a brand or about a government policy or about the way people behave in certain situations, or people buy things, we are able to read up, or we are able to learn from the research that has already been done. We have listed the kind of secondary research which is available and is important for a PR person. This includes the books, it includes government papers, the census. It also includes other researches that are done on the topic or around the topic. The most important thing is that with the help of the secondary research, a PR person is able to put down the objectives or set out the objectives for a certain campaign or a certain strategy. The primary research, on the other hand, entails going and getting the raw data from the market. Now this raw data of course needs to be sifted later, to be made sense of, which again is a laborious process. It's a process that consumes a lot of time and a lot of money. Therefore, secondary research is something that is often acceptable and often preferred as the type of research done in PR. I want to get your attention to the syndicated research. The syndicated research is essentially research that is initiated by the brands or the client themselves. This is a new phenomena, or it is like an existing phenomena in the corporate world, where the brands themselves take up a third-party market research company to go and find out in the field, do a primary research to get facts, to get understanding of the consumer, of their brand image, or how people deal with, or how people look after their sort of needs or have their own attitudes, etc. The syndicated research is done very systematically again, and it is a primary research. I have also listed down some of the leading MR agencies in India. These are usually big corporates, and they may be based in one place or one country, and then they have branches all over. Like we talk about IMRB, it's one of the oldest research companies in India. It's an international company, and it is based in Bombay, but it has offices all across the metros, the cities, and even into the rural sort of scenario, because they do a lot of research for big clients like HLL or like Nestle, etc. The others are also mentioned there. Hansa is one particular MR agency I want you to pay particular attention to, because Hansa pioneered a lot of media research about which we are going to talk later. The last on the list is AR, this is a government, semi-government, economic centric organization, which brings you a lot of authentic data from the Indian people from the market. So this kind of research, syndicated research, often forms a base of good PR strategy. Then let's understand quantitative and qualitative research. These are again two types of research, which, going back to the philosophy of research and talking about the ontology and the epistemology, we realize that there are two broad paradigms within which research is done. One paradigm is in which research is considered or is held to be based on being one type of reality. This is what we mean by the natural sciences, also talking about finding the truth, the one truth. Usually, that philosophy leads to a quantitative research method. The quantitative research method is the one. Quantitative research is expressed in numbers, graphs, and in statistical, mathematical computing techniques. Now, this is when we are really dealing with figures. This is when we are trying to understand the theories, and we are trying to understand, test out certain experiments and then gather the information in terms of data. Quantitative research, as the name suggests, talks about quantifying, talks about the number, it talks about large databases. And invariably, census, for example, is a quantitative research where you go out to a large base of people and give them certain questions to answer, and then you quantify that answer to find out certain trends. The methods that are used in quantitative research are, most popular one is the survey. The survey could be either questions which are closed as in they give you an option only of yes or no, or it could give you multiple choices to answer that question. But survey is something that the PR uses most often when it is doing its research. From a survey, the other important method used in quantitative research is experiments. So experiment is something where a situation is manipulated in order to see how people react to it. For example, if one is testing out a campaign, one could very well take a select people and show the campaign to them. So these would be two groups, one group which sees the campaign and the other group which does not see the campaign, and then you measure whether the campaign had some effect or had the right effect or had that effect which was intended in the objectives. So that kind of method is called an experiment method, where groups of people are taken and one particular group is manipulated with some information in order to get their reaction. Apart from this, there is observation. Again, this observation in quantitative sense is the observation which helps you to figure out the data. For example, how many people were there, so you can quantify and say 20 people, what is the height of the people, weight of the people. So anything that's quantifiable and gives you a trend and has a large database is what roughly qualifies as quantitative research. We move on to the qualitative research next, which, as the name suggests, is really about understanding the concept, thoughts, or the experiences. Now, from the point of view of the ontology and epistemology, the thinking behind qualitative method or qualitative research is to acknowledge that there is no one truth. The truth is something which is very contextual. For example, in a certain community, some colors may have some meaning, and that color could have very different meaning in another culture. So these kind of differences, which are led by the context, have to be understood, and if those are to be understood, then one goes for a qualitative research. So this type of research will help you gather in-depth knowledge and also help you to understand what we call the insights. Insights are something that are used when you are developing a campaign, when you're trying to touch the emotions of the viewer or the emotions of the person with whom the PR activity is being conducted. Important methods here are really interviews. Interviews gives you an opportunity to talk to the person, and many times the interview is structured, so one may have, say, about a limited number of questions to which the answer is sought, but many times it's open-ended, where you begin to talk and the person then reacts, and then you put a question to that. And the whole idea behind doing an interview is to be able to go beyond the obvious and get those insights, get those real nuggets on which then the campaigns can be made or the interaction can happen. The other good example is that of a focus group discussion. Here you get a group of people to come and discuss a topic, and in their discussion with each other come out various problems, barriers, thinking patterns, which can again be noted. Other methods like ethnography or literature review, these are also part of qualitative research, in which in ethnography you become a part of the member's life or a community's life, and you are able to sort of understand what's happening, what the culture of that place is. And literature review, of course, helps you to understand how others have looked at various concepts and theories. So quickly, let's understand what a research design for a particular PR problem or a PR research would be like. So the design comprises of a few steps, in which the most important is to be able to set out the objective, which is what is the rationale. Whenever you do research, you need to know why you are doing that research. So setting an objective of the research is the first important thing. As I said, that's based on the epistemology and the ontology of why you're wanting to find out. That leads to the methodology, because if you are trying to do a natural science approach, then you are going to get into the quantitative research. If you're trying to do the interpretative understanding or understanding truths from various perspectives, then you go for the qualitative methodology. Each of the methodology, as we saw, has its own tools, and depending on what the objective is, the methodology and the tools get selected. So, in short, let us quickly sum up what we have understood today. We understood that research is the basis of every marketing activity, which includes the public relations. As a public relation professional, one must understand research so that they are able to base the judgment, or they are able to base the facts in a systematic way, and be able to differentiate between what is fact and what is common sense. Secondary research provides us a wide range of information about the market, the brand and the media, and therefore is a preferred choice for research in public relation. Primary research is also very important because it helps you to understand the people and how they are feeling. The qualitative research, which is based out of a huge data, gives you the statistical analysis. This is important for setting the PR objectives, and qualitative research helps to find the insights which are helpful to develop the campaigns. Media research has emerged as one of the specialized research today. It helps to decide how to reach the publics through the available media. Thank you.